Welcome to our Thursday edition of Winn Tucson. We're going to talk about issues, give you information so you can make an informed decision when you go to the poll on Tuesday. I don't want to waste any time. I am so thrilled that Marc Victor agreed to come on our show today. For anybody who doesn't know, Marc is the Libertarian candidate who was running for U.S. Senate in Arizona. Earlier this week, he announced that he has dropped out of the race, and he endorsed Republican Blake Masters one week before Election Day. Marc, welcome to Winn Tucson.
Hey, Kathleen. Thanks so much for having me on your show. It's a real honor and pleasure to have been invited and to be on your show.
Well, Marc, so many things to talk about, but when did you enter the race originally?
When did I enter the race?
Yes.
Well, it was quite a while ago because it took quite an effort to get enough signatures on petitions to even get on the ballot. I guess I got myself to sort of blame for this. I ran in 2012, and I got on the ballot as a Libertarian, and I got over 100,000 votes. This is the election Jeff Flake won. And the Republicans then changed the election laws here in Arizona to make it so much more difficult. They said only Libertarians, registered Libertarians and independents could sign the petition. So this was quite a project to even get on the ballot. And so, yeah, it was quite a while ago. And but, you know, Libertarians are always underfunded, so we don't get commercials and things like that. But, yeah, it's been quite a while.
Not having commercials right now may be a saving grace. I would, especially those that bash people. But I want to I want to say something because it took a great effort to get on the ballot, and yet this week on Tuesday, you made a decision to essentially you're on the ballot, but you have said I'm no longer running for U.S. Senate. And can you let my listeners know what happened from the time that we saw you on the debate stage with Senator Mark Kelly and Blake Masters and yourself? What has transpired that brought you to that conclusion on this week?
Well, I guess the short answer is, the brand I'm building, which is something I think, unfortunately, very rare in politics. I keep my word. I act with integrity. And character is very important, and so is civility. Like you say, even if I could run commercials, I would never and will never run a negative ad. I think we need to bring civility back, even to politics and beyond politics, the way we treat each other. I think we've gone off the rails in this regard. Yeah, sure, I'm not suggesting there should be a law that you should be civil, but the law can't control everything. So after the debate, which, I hesitate to even call this a debate. This wasn't a debate. This was, the other, Blake and Mark Kelly could have just simply rerun their commercials. I didn't learn anything about either of the two of them after that. And I didn't get very much time to say much of anything. I got far less time than they did, yeah. So after that debate, which I'm putting in quotes, I put out a video that essentially said, look, people were asking me to step down. I got an avalanche of people, really from both sides, saying, hey, Mark, you're going to take votes away from either one or the other, and I love one or the other, and so I want you to step down. And so I thought about this, under what conditions would I step down? And I thought, for me, the whole reason I'm running is not for the fun of having people send me ugly, miserable, threatening emails and to be torn apart and to have statements taken out of context and all that really great stuff. But because I'm sitting around listening to people saying, well, why don't good people get into politics? Well, I know why good people don't get into politics, because it's a miserable endeavor.
A lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, but I got kids, and I love the country, and I hate where we're going, and I care very deeply about freedom and peace and civility. I've been saying the same exact things for about 30 years.
I was going to say, for a very long time.
Yeah, and I've been saying very consistently the same thing. So I decided to sort of throw my hat in the ring, and I thought to myself, getting elected is less important to me than actually trying to move the needle towards freedom, peace, and civility. So what would get me to step down? Well, if one of these two guys wants to sit down and have a real conversation with me, and if they can convince me that it's in the interest of freedom and peace and civility for me to step down and endorse them, then that's exactly what I would do. And I said that publicly. and I put it out there. And that was right after the debate. And either one of them could have taken me up on that offer right at the beginning. But I put a big condition on it, which was I don't want to do anything behind closed doors. I want everything to be 100% transparent. I didn't want to have even one word of conversation with either of the two of them until that public conversation. I wanted it either live streamed or recorded. And neither one of them wanted to do that. But I think as the race tightened, and, polls were showing anywhere from, at the low end, 3 to the high end, 15, and pretty consistently 6. And as the spread closed to, 2 points, I think they were realizing, hey, Marc is controlling an important voting block here. So Blake Masters' campaign reached out to my campaign, and at first they wanted to have a private conversation. I said no. Then they said, okay, we'll have the conversation, but we want to be guaranteed an endorsement. I said no. They said, well, we want you to make a decision at the end. I said no. I said, look, I'm going to do exactly what I said. I'll have a public conversation, and if I'm convinced, then I may step down. I may step down and endorse. It all depends. So they said, fine, but all we can give you is 20 minutes. I said, well, 20 minutes isn't very long, but they just said, look, it's at the end stages, and that's all we got. So I said, okay, sort of reluctantly, and then I, went into lawyer mode, and I recognized that if people watch that 20-minute discussion or so between me and Blake Masters, it looks more like a leading direct examination than anything else. And in a sense it was, because if he wanted me to step down, I want to lock him in publicly to a whole bunch of positions that I considered to be very pro-freedom and pro-peace. I knew we would agree on most of the economic issues. I mean,
correct.
There's overlap between libertarians and Republicans on economic issues, but usually it's the social issues, right? The civil liberties issues, the place where I generally line up better with what I'll call the traditional left, not the woke current left we have, the radical left, if you will, or the radical right. I feel like I more represent the people left over when you sort of chop off the radical left and the radical right. So I went through a bunch of those issues. And, the one issue that I think said more to me than anything else was his answer on euthanasia, the idea of competent adults getting to decide the circumstances under which their death occurs, to me is an important issue. I recently lost a friend to ALS, and he was extraordinarily competent at the end of his life. I was with him just days before he essentially had to take his own life. He shot himself in the head, and it was just an awful ending for a guy who would have preferred to, die with dignity. And so, the issue means a lot to me.
Marc?
But anyway, I asked him, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm so sorry. We have to take a short break. I'm talking to Marc Victor, who was a Libertarian candidate for U.S. Senate. When we come back, I want to pick up right where we're leaving off. It's about 2 minutes, and we'll come right back, and we'll just continue this conversation. I'm Kathleen Winn on Winn Tucson. We'll be back right after these short messages. Welcome back to Winn Tucson. I'm your host, Kathleen Winn, and we're joined with my special guest, Marc Victor. So, Marc, we were talking about dying with dignity, and before we get in, I'm sorry for your loss of your friend. And that is, to take your own life in a violent way like that is just a horrific, that's not a choice someone should have to make.
Yeah, and thank you for those comments. And by the way, if people are interested, and I so highly recommend this, he left a website, actually, in a post that came up after his death. If people are interested, I highly recommend. This is so just inspiring. It's Eric, E-R-I-C, The Fun, ericthefun.com. If you go there, you'll see his statement that he left there, which is so inspiring. He encourages everybody to just live their best life, and he was thankful at the end of his life for the great life he had, which we all should be, right? We live in the best place at the best time. We shouldn't lose sight of that. But in any event, I was making the point that I was running this, in sort of a shotgun fashion past Blake Masters in this public interview we had, which, by the way, he confirmed that we hadn't had one word exchanged between us since the debate. And what he said to me I thought was very telling. He said that, he has personal religious views about euthanasia that basically are against euthanasia. But he made a statement, and I'm paraphrasing here, that he didn't want to put his personal moral views into the law on other people. That to me is such a key point, to even have to pay, even just to tip the hat to that important issue, because this is the root of what I'm saying. Look, we all have different worldviews about things, and we're entitled to those worldviews. We don't all agree on morality. There's very hard questions out there. I mean, people have been arguing about morality for thousands of years. Correct. We're not likely to agree on this anytime soon. So we have two choices here. We can either fight each other to put our own personal morality into the law and impose it on other people, or choice number two, we endeavor to set a minimum standard in the law, which I favor, and I describe it with the simple phrase, don't be an aggressor, right? Nobody gets to lay hands on anybody else. Don't hit people, don't take their things, don't put them in danger, things like that. That's the minimum standard of conduct that we should all require from each other. But everything else, it goes outside the law, and I'm not ending the conversation. I'm starting the conversation. Correct. I'm saying, look, we got a moral principle. Be a good human, and I want to push that really hard. There are people with horrible ideas about morality out there. I want to confront them. I want to try to persuade them. I think we have very good arguments here why people should act in certain ways that, I think are consistent with this phrase, be a good human, and we can talk about that if you like.
Yes.
I think it's in their interest to act that way, so let's convince them. I don't want to force them, and this is just like a free speech issue, and I know you as a lawyer understand this.
Well, Mark, I'm not a lawyer. I just worked at the Attorney General's office. I only play one on TV, but or the radio right now. But I have great respect for the law, and I have great respect for upholding the law. So maybe that's why. But
yeah, and I make an analogy here to First Amendment free speech, and you don't need to be a lawyer to understand this. If you can't stand up and support the rights of other people to say horribly offensive things that you personally disagree with, well, you're not really for free speech. And so I stand up for the rights of people to act in ways that are immoral, unwise, unhealthy, things like that, so long as they're peaceful, so long as they're not aggressing against other people. And I do my best to convince them to act otherwise, but I support their legal rights to act even immorally, so long as they're not interfering with other people. I think that's the best position. If we care about getting to freedom and peace and civility, frankly, I think that's the only position. This isn't an alternative way to get there. It's the only way we can get there. And at the end of the day, that's what I care about. And if Blake Masters is willing to get me 70 or 80% or even 90% of the way there, something like that,
yes,
then I'm going to drop out and say, look, support him. I'll do my best to try to influence him towards that 100%, and let's see where things go. And look, if Mark Kelly gets into office, I'll probably cut a video congratulating him and wishing him the best. And I think we should lead by example, and that's what I intend to do for everything that I'll ever say publicly, whether it's a radio show or if I do anything else politically going forward. I think we need to lead by example and try to unite the reasonable, civilized people of the world who may feel differently on issues. Let's unite them behind some simple rules. I call them live and let live, and people can find out about them. Just go to liveandletlive.org. We started a global peace movement, which is really growing.
I love it. And just so you know, our tagline here is issues, not politics. I tell people the predators, because I fight sex trafficking, the predators don't care how we vote.
Right.
They want to exploit, and they want to take advantage. They don't even care that they're breaking the law. It's about profit and greed and power. And if we don't start to come at problems with a more collective mind, I think we're going to keep getting what we've got, and it's not getting better. And I think if I heard anything out of it, I've heard a lot of what you've said today. One of the things that I think stands out to me the loudest is you have children. The quality of our life right now, although probably some of the best in the world, is still deteriorating. And so what caused you to sit down with Blake was there enough similarities between the two? And not even similarities, but is there enough of the same mindset that you could, and you didn't know going into this conversation, right? You didn't have a decided agenda when you sat down with Blake, correct?
He had no idea what I was going to ask him. I told him I would take nothing off the table. I feel free to ask him anything I want. Those were my conditions. I wanted it to be transparent. It's the only. I think we should all do things this way. I mean, look, do things however you like. But I'm tired of the tribalism and the divisiveness and the name calling.
Exactly.
I'm sick of it. I just think we need to stop it. In fact, if I ever do run again for anything, I would love to sit down with my opponent and say, look, let's not do a negative campaign. Let's sit down. Let's figure out where we actually disagree philosophically, and then let's have a civilized, respectful conversation about our differences and let people decide based on those differences. You know, like Mark Kelly, I didn't sit down with him. I don't know what his underlying philosophy is. I don't know what he thinks the role of government should be. I don't know what he would do if he could do anything. These are the kinds of things I'd like to know, and I don't know what people are for or against. I can't tell by a sign that says vote for me, and I can't tell by a 30-second commercial that tells me how horrible their opponent is.
Correct.
And I think we, as voters, as Americans, as human beings, we need to have a bigger attention span than that of a gnat. We shouldn't call this thing a debate. That this wasn't a debate. A debate is the three of us should have sat down together for 2 hours so we could each intimately understand where the other person is coming from. Then we should have sat down in front of the camera and had a nice discussion about, so I could say, look, Mark, now Senator Kelly, I understand your position. Tell me if I got it wrong. Is this, that, and the next thing? And he says, yeah, that's my position. Okay, well, here's why I take a different position. Tell me why you think my position is wrong. We can have a real discussion on this stuff. But, you know, until we demand this kind of thing as consumers, right? Until
Correct.
we say, look, PBS, that debate was useless, right? We didn't learn anything.
It was a drive-by.
Right, it was a drive-by. They assured me I would get 60 seconds to introduce, hi, my name is Mark. Here's everything you need to know about me and what I support. 60 seconds for that. And then 60 seconds in the closing. And as you may have noticed in the debate, they cut me off at 41 seconds. And I'm a lawyer. I argue in front of the Ninth Circuit. You got to be tight on time. I went through that closing and had it down to 59 seconds to 61 seconds.
Correct.
So I knew they didn't give me my 1 minute. And, you know, it was just sad that they couldn't even give me that while the other two were bickering back and forth and over the same kinds of divisive things. And I had so much more to say. I felt like I came there with 2 tons of TNT, of ammunition, of things to talk about. And I got to shoot off a firecracker and leave. And I walked out of that debate feeling like I didn't really get to say anything I wanted to say on any of these issues. And it was just, like you say, it was just a drive-by. And look, I've said this on many occasions. If everybody knew everything about what the three of us were saying, I believe I would have won this election in a landslide, not because I'm anything special, but because I'm putting out the right answer for the question, how can people who feel differently about things actually get along and cooperate in the world and live happy, actually be neighbors and get along? We got to stop forcing each other to live in ways we think are best and recognize that, you know, people live differently.
And Mark, hasn't it? But right now, I mean, the elephant or the donkey, I guess, in the room is that the word compromise has become a dirty word. If you compromise, you're compromising with the, quote, I'm going to do air quotes, enemy. And we have been so divisive for a very long time, and we're dysfunctional. So the dysfunction that we're seeing in our government and in our country is because we're not trying to focus on the issues. We're trying to focus on personalities, on power, on control, on who's in charge. And that is not how this country was designed. So we have gone, and this is my opinion, again, not a legal one, but we've gone away from the things that made us fundamentally great as a country. And I think that's what you're saying. And I just, let me know if I'm close.
I couldn't agree more. What I would add to that, though, is I take some optimism from this horrendously bad, divisive situation we have, which is it creates opportunity, right? I mean, I think people kind of noticed Mark's a man of integrity. Mark, I've been so bold as to say I don't lie about anything to anyone. And people said, Mark, you got money from the Dems. I said, I don't care who's giving me money, and I don't care who I'm talking to. I'm saying the same things.
Marc, we're going to take another short break. Will you stay with me for one more segment?
I'd love to.
Okay, great. We'll be back. We were talking to Marc Victor, who withdrew as a Libertarian candidate in the U.S. Senate race. I'm Kathleen Winn. This is Winn Tucson. You're listening to The Voice, 1030 a.m. Welcome back to Winn Tucson. It's time to speak up, solve problems, and bring solutions to everyday concerns. I'm joined by Marc Victor. Marc withdrew on Tuesday the race and endorsed Blake Masters. He's talking to me about elections and his guiding principles of how people should run for office and govern. So, Marc, we've got a little bit of time left here. You put a lot of work into running for Senate. You made this decision this week. You are a principled man. If you had a magic wand, what would the next election cycle look like as we head to 2024? Because we can't really... You made the greatest impact I think anybody could have made in this Senate race this week by doing what you did. And I think it was probably the most selfless and principled decision a person could make because you stuck true to your values. So I'd love to hear what you'd like to see us do going forward.
Well, thanks so much for those kind words. I think, and I recognize this election is really big, right? And who controls the Senate and all that, but there's a bigger project out there that's much more important than this election or who controls the Senate or even what happens just in our country. We need a global peace movement. I can't believe there's not an effort right now to have a real serious peace movement, not just people jumping up and down saying I love peace, but based on the right principles that actually could get us to peace. I mean, I like to say it like this. I'm a lone wolf, right? I do my own thinking, and the Live and Let Live movement is really a pack of lone wolves. Mm-hmm. We each do our own thinking. We claim the right to own ourselves, right? And we have voluntarily agreed really to just two rules. The first rule is a mandatory rule. I explain it with just don't aggress, right? No exceptions. It applies to everybody, groups, corporations, the government. No exceptions for any reason. Nobody gets to aggress. And what our goal here is to just contour all of the laws to be in harmony with that rule. The other rule is just a suggestion. This be a good human stuff. What we're trying to do here is just inspire people to follow that rule. And what should be obvious here is that you can't violate rule number one, which is to aggress, for the purpose of enforcing rule number two, be a good human. That's the big takeaway, and that's the thing that we have forgotten about. I think there are very good people, say on the left and really on the right as well. There are good people who want to accomplish good moral things. Like take, for example, the Bernie Sanders position. What I would say to Bernie Sanders, you might think we're very far apart. What I would say is, no, we're not that far apart. You want to help people less fortunate, I do too. You want to make sure people have access to health care, I do too. You want to make sure people get good educations, I do too. What I would say to Bernie, the only place we disagree is I see those as moral issues, not legal issues. So he wants to take those issues and put them in the law and then force everybody
Correct.
To fund things. And I'm saying, look, let's get it done. I want to get it done. Join me. Let's work on it together. But it's outside the law. And the reason it has to be outside the law is people with different moral views, right? There are people out there who think women should wear headscarves when they go outside, and they want to put that into the law. What do we say to such people? We either say what we're saying now, which is, sorry, our morality is better than yours. Ours goes into the law, yours doesn't. Just saying that, you can already understand why there's strife and why we're fighting each other. Or we take the other approach, the approach that I'm recommending, the approach that Live and Let Live is pushing, the approach that says, look, I'm not taking a position on your morality. Maybe it's very nice that women wear headscarves or whatever, but everybody's morality, yours, mine, everybody's, for the sake of getting to freedom and peace and civility, they all go outside the law. And if you want to convince women to wear headscarves when they go outside, have fun trying to persuade them. If you can, they should. But if your morality is not good enough to actually persuade people to follow it, well, then evaluate your own morality and the strength or lack thereof of that morality. We have to get to this position before we blow ourselves up. I don't think I'm overstating the case. I'm thinking about nuclear weapons and not just the proliferation, but soon people will be able to build them, and anybody who wants them will have one.
The aggressor position, though, is so critical. We are threatening. There are death threats. There have been more death threats in this election cycle than in any election cycle I've ever been involved in. And so if we don't get what we want, we are, and we've become aggressors. And
Can't we condemn what happened with Nancy Pelosi's husband? Whether you love her or whether you hate her, can't we all first say the first thing out of our mouths is we are against and deplore and condemn somebody would break into someone's house and attack another person regardless of what their political position is. We are against aggression in all cases, in all directions, on all issues, for all people, period. No except, not for the government, not for corporations, not for groups, no exceptions. I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care if you're religious or not religious. I don't care where you were born, what holidays you celebrate. Who you love, we don't care. Nobody gets to aggress. We should draw a hard line there and then do our best to try to inspire people to act in ways we think they should act. We have a better argument here. Why do we have to put it in the law? And so my ask here, Kathleen, is that your listeners go to liveandletlive.org. Read what's there. Use your own brain. Claim ownership of your own life. Read what's there. If you disagree with one word, reach out and say, Mark, I disagree. I don't think you will. I think if you read it, you'll say, you know what, this makes great sense. Okay, good. Take some action. Join the movement. I'd love to be able to stand up and say we have tens of millions of people as part of the Live and Let Live global peace movement. We demand some attention. And then blast it out to your social media and say, look, there's a global peace movement. By the way, we got 10 countries in Africa right now. We have very good groups in the UK and in Portugal and in Poland and in Canada and across the United States. This is a growing movement. This, to me, is the most important thing going on in the world, more important than who controls the Senate for another few years, right? I mean, look, one group will get its way, and then the other group will come in and try to undo everything the last group just did. Like, are we sick of this yet? We got to change how we're doing business.
I think we are. Mark, I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for where you're standing right now. And we will circle back after this election. Newsmax said that you doing this, those votes most likely will go to Blake. I know you have endorsed him. So you may be the kingmaker, if you will, in the Senate race. I know you didn't do it for that reason, but thank you for where you're standing and your commitment to no aggression, to peace, and to having a better world for us to live in. I want to thank my guest, Marc Victor, today for being on Winn Tucson, and we will have, just in a moment, we'll be joined by Mark Fincham, who's running for Secretary of State. Thank you. Hi, I'm Kathleen Winn, and you are listening to Winn Tucson. And we are getting so close to this election, 5 days away. Mark Fincham is on the phone with me. Mark is a current state legislator, and he's running for Secretary of State. Mark, welcome to Winn Tucson.
Well, thank you for having me on. Good to be on again with you.
Oh, great. And so you had an issue with Twitter this week, correct?
a bit of a kerfuffle, yeah. Some troll in the basement of Twitter decided to deactivate our account because they were offended by something that I put up there. I think it had something to do with Hunter's laptop or something. Anyhow, they sent us a kind of a nasty gram and said, you've been canceled, or whatever it is that happens when you're in Twitter jail. And we put that out. Shortly after that, Jenna Ellis asked Elon Musk on Twitter, hey, what's up with this? Elon's response was, I'll check into it.
And magically,
1 minute later, our account was back up.
That's good. It's good to have friends in high places.
Well, I mean, or a guy that takes over a far left fringe propaganda outlet and suddenly makes it available to everybody instead of just the privileged few.
Well, I think we just had Marc Victor on, and we were talking about how we need freedom of speech. We need people to be able to think for themselves. And there's a lot going on with this election. So you have Cochise County wanting to do a hand count, and so can I get your comment?
The Secretary of State trying to do everything she can to prevent that.
Correct. So, and there's been a suit filed, correct, against the supervisors in Cochise County? Is that where we're at?
I don't know the status of that yet. There's so many things that are going on. It's certainly something that I'll probably have an opportunity to check on after I get done with interviews this morning.
Okay. But how difficult would it be for the state of Arizona to do one-day voting, to do paper ballots, to do hand counting? People say, that would take years to count the ballots. What's the truth about that?
Well, the truth is that many countries do just that. So apparently it's not impossible. It has more to do, I think, with political will and, whether or not people are interested in seeing to it that we have true transparency. I mean, anytime you count votes with a machine that has software that that it's not open source code.
Correct.
You have no idea what's actually in it because they won't let you see what's actually in it. Well, that's a problem for me. That's not transparency. That means that unelected, unaccountable, private contractors have a higher level of authority on the elections than the people we elected to ensure election transparency. That's unacceptable to me.
Robert Bose was on my show earlier this week, and we were talking about the ability inside the machines, the software can flip votes, and that's been discovered, and they are trying to file suits where the machines can't adjudicate. Now, in Arizona, God bless Arizona, we did not. I think this was the bill that had all these different things in it. It was kind of a fruit salad bill, and so it got voted down because some people agreed with some things in the bill. But unfortunately, one of the things it left in place was that these machines could adjudicate the votes here. Do you think that's going to be a problem come Tuesday or Wednesday?
Well, I think that anytime you have a machine that is doing something that humans really are supposed to be doing, that's a problem. I have a problem with machine adjudication because the whole point of having an election is for the people to be involved in the process of choosing their government. And when you turn it over to a machine that you can't check the code, I mean, this whole thing is a circular firing squad, a circular conversation. If you can't verify the code, then you're left wondering exactly what is it that we're seeing as far as a result.
So do we as Arizona voters have a right to request that we have fair and free elections in Arizona, or is it or not?
I think we have a right to demand them. It's not a request.
Okay. Good.
Elections belong to the people. They don't belong to the government. They don't belong to the government bureaucracy. It's wholly unacceptable for the government bureaucracy to tell the people, this is how this is going to be. No. That is up to the legislature, not to the bureaucracy.
So, Mark, earlier this week on Monday, Catherine Engelbrecht and Greg Phillips were put in jail because they won't reveal a source, and they turned over all their information to the FBI. And yet the judge is insisting that they come forth and tell who gave them that information. And what they tried to say was they gave the information to the FBI and they did not keep the information, but yet they have sat in now jail for 4 days. Is that, this is the U.S., is that what we've come to?
Well, this is the harassment by a court that appears to be corrupt. there was an attempt to have I believe it was an ex parte proceeding that they weren't even aware of, that would have prevented anyone from looking at the Koenig problem.
Right.
Koenig tried to go to court and have it covered up, and apparently the judge who was involved is now playing in that field as well. So there's a whole lot more to this story than is what is being reported. And they're just sticking by their guns. We're not going to tell you who our source is because there's more to it.
Well,
there's more to it.
And here's the problem. If we don't get this straight, you've got people that are trying to help us maintain fair and free elections. Clearly, we have issues in Arizona, Pinell County, during the primary, right? We didn't have enough ballots.
Mm-hmm.
So, right. And people go, how does that happen? How could that happen?
And we've got a Secretary of State who mails out ballots that illegal aliens. I mean, there's so many things that are happening that are outside of the law. Yet we've got an Attorney General, outgoing Attorney General, in my view, just a disgraceful man, who is now saying that the information that Greg and Catherine furnished to his office a year ago was false. Well, okay. Interestingly enough, other legal minds, other investigators say that's not so.
Well, and
so I'm not quite sure where we're going to go with this.
Yes,
but I'm glad to see that we are having we're going to see a significant change in the leadership of this state. We're going to have a governor who is going to be aggressive about holding people accountable to follow the law. We're going to have a Secretary of State who is going to be aggressive about holding people accountable for following the law. And we're going to have Abe Hamadeh as a Attorney General who is going to see to it that when prosecutions meet the standard, they're going to happen. The end of this two-tier justice system that I think everybody knows exists, but nobody wants to talk about it, I think that is in sight.
There's so much that's happened since 2020, right? And we've learned a lot. But what we didn't do is the indictments and the convictions in San Luis are our evidence that there was some voter fraud, correct? Because then,
right.
and election deniers become, the same category as ultra MAGA. Last night.
Well, we're actually election skeptics, which is what every voter should be, by the way. Be skeptical. It's okay. It's your election. You have a right to be skeptical.
Did the legislature this last session, there were some laws passed that made it a little bit safer for voting. Did we get rid of the federal only ballots?
No, we can't. We've bought into this whole HAVA thing that Congress is trying to make it so, and this is dangerous. Quite frankly, this is coming out of the power cartel from both left and right. They want to see to it that illegal aliens have the ability to vote. Mm-hmm. And frankly, anybody going to Congress, that needs to be a question right up front. And if they don't take action to shut that down in the very first term that they're in office, they need thrown out of office. We need to restore legal citizenship, legal votes from people who have an interest in this nation, not somebody who came here just by crossing the border illegally.
How many of the 5 million illegal immigrants that are in this country are going to vote this election?
We have no way of knowing. In California, a lot of them. In Arizona, not so much so. But fact remains that in the last election, the delta between Joe Biden and Donald Trump was 10,473 votes, I think.
Yes.
So it doesn't take very many.
But, and how many federal-only ballots did we have in the last election?
That number I don't know off the top of my head.
I think it's higher than the 10,000. And so as we go to the polls on Tuesday, if someone sees something that looks, should they call their sheriff? Should they call, what do people do if they think that they're seeing something that isn't kosher on Tuesday?
Well, it depends on what they're seeing. First of all, if they go to the polls and they're told that they've already voted, they immediately need to contact the sheriff's office and file a identity theft complaint. Yep. Okay. If they see something suspicious, it would be a call to the sheriff's office, or if they happen to have there's an app called Votify Now, Votify Now.
We've had him on. Yes.
People can put that on their phone. They can take a picture. They can upload an incident report. This is particularly useful for folks who are receiving ballots that they did not ask for, or they're receiving ballots that are addressed to individuals that don't live at their home, especially if they're receiving a ballot for somebody who doesn't live at their home, who has never lived at their home. But if this is a first-time event, because what we're seeing, and I've got a number of reports of this, fictitious individuals having ballots sent to the voter's home. They need to hang on to, anybody receiving one of those needs to hang on to that, because that's evidence. And if, when this is all said and done, we see that ballot shows up on the vote cast record, meaning the individual who received a ballot at that address is shown as voting, yet the ballot is still in the possession of the homeowner, that is evidence that shows us just how insecure the whole idea of our current mail-in election system is.
Where are you on hand counting?
I'm a big supporter.
Okay.
Paper ballots, hand counting at the precinct level.
And what do you think about eliminating these drop boxes? Oops.
Well, I think that unsupervised drop boxes are an insecure means of collecting votes.
Marc, thank you for serving us in LD 11. Good luck on Tuesday, and we will talk to you after that. This is Kathleen Winn with Winn Tucson. Go out and make it a great day.